Good afternoon. Welcome to the Meredith Select Board Workshop of August 8th at 4:15 in the Meredith Community Center. At this time, I'll introduce the board members. Hillary Seaver.
Good afternoon.
Lou Kahn.
Good afternoon.
Nathan Torr.
Good afternoon.
Vice Chair Peter Brothers.
Good afternoon.
Carla Horn. Phil Warren, Town Manager.
Good afternoon.
And Karen Landry, our recording clerk. In your packet, we have one item for the workshop, W14-18, Library Board of Trustees, Memo of Understanding. The library trustees and Aaron are here this afternoon in response to a draft memo of the understanding dated July 8th, which was presented to the town of Meredith to the Board of Trustees. Aaron, would you like to go ahead, and then I'll just let you present, and then we'll have board questions or comments.
Well, the memo of understanding, well, we had written originally a letter of understanding.
I'm sorry, could you just, for the recording, could you just introduce yourself?
Pauline Nolan, I'm Vice Chair of the Library Trustees. And back a few years ago, we were charged by the town to come up with a document to really delineate the roles and responsibilities of the town and the library. And we put a document into writing, and then the town came back with their document. And now this is our response to your response. Okay?
Go ahead.
I'm Erin Apostolos, I'm the library director, and I just want to add that the original draft that the trustees and I created just put into writing the relationship that we felt has existed with the town for the past 21 years, and there's nothing new in that. It's just our attempt to try to put into writing what has already been happening.
So that's it? Nothing, you don't want to make any comments or anything? I just thought I would let you present before the board fires questions at you, but if you don't need to, then that's fine.
We're ready for questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? No comments? No?
This redraft smells of a lawyer,
It
and I don't like lawyers because I was one. And it looks like you're spending a lot of money on lawyers, and I don't want the town to spend money on lawyers, so I've discouraged Phil from spending money on lawyers. I guess I'm kind of puzzled. I don't have any question with the statute that says that town, that, you know, the trustees have custody and management of the library property. What I think Phil was trying to do was say, hey, we've got people who manage buildings in the town and do not control necessarily, you know, we wouldn't control the library, but if the plumbing failed, you could call us instead of finding a plumber.
Thank you.
All right? If the light bulb goes out, we can replace the light bulbs. And wouldn't it make sense if we've got people who are running buildings to add the building, the library, as our responsibility by contract, with the contract specifically saying that it is the library building, that the library trustees have control, that they're contracting with the town for day-to-day maintenance and operation. Why do you want that? I think, Aaron, you'd be happy to get rid of that.
I would like to say that we already have the town doing some of those things. They do change the light bulbs for us. The problem with the plumbing, and this is actually a good issue, is Public Works has a lot to do. And I have called them for issues such as plumbing, and we were struck by lightning, and their recommendation to us is to call the plumber. So that is what I do. It's not a hardship for me. I actually like having the control of being able to call a plumber when I feel I need one.
Other comments? Hillary?
I just have questions. I understand, I'm looking at the RSAs here. I have questions about the differentiation that you want versus what different
what do you all want in your personnel policy that would be different from how we treat the personnel of the town?
It's my understanding from reading the town's personnel policy that the town manager would have the final say on many things, the hiring process. The way the town policy reads, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the town manager really has the final say on just about everything. And for the library staff, it's the library trustees that have the final say.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the town manager has the final say on the day-to-day issues, hiring, firing, discipline, and implementation of policy. What I don't have control over, and it's strictly a board decision, is establishing the classification plan and the salary plan. That's only done on recommendation of the town manager. So the town manager makes recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, the Selectmen make the salary plan. But yes, the rest of it falls under control of the town manager.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So would you have different classifications of employees, different benefits, different vacation time allotments, or are you going to stay consistent with the town on that?
For the most part, we have stayed consistent. There's a couple of small differences. I think the only big difference is who has the final say.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
There are, to your question, Hillary, there are right now two differences that have happened in the past few years. One is, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, library employees get their birthday off.
Correct. Staff appreciation, the trustees decided that would be an extra day off.
Okay, so they get their birthday off, and not to bring this up again, but we have a policy of no reclassifications since I started here in '09, and there was a position, and I'm not speaking on the merits of it, it's just the fact that it happened. You know, the library reclassified a position, they did their needs test for it, and they felt that it was necessary. Now, those are the only two differences in benefits that have occurred. When I say reclassification, it's a position that was paid at a lower salary rate, and the library determined that it needed to be paid at a higher salary rate.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Can I just add something to that?
Of course.
Again, not to beat a dead horse on the reclassification, but it was actually a new position we were previously contracting for, and we decided to add those tasks, those responsibilities to an existing staff member who had the training to do it.
Any other comments?
Just a quick comment. I don't like all the verbiage, period. I think just a common agreement between two groups would be better, and I think that was in the past, but I guess we've gone beyond that point, so I'll just leave my comment there, because I've been involved on both sides of the fence, shall we say this.
Peter, any comments?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, and maybe I misunderstood a little bit where I thought we were going in terms of the maintenance of the building. I was under the impression with just the general discussions that we've had was that the town owned the building and the land, and that it made sense to try to coordinate what I call the full run of the maintenance, rather than just, specific emptying the trash cans and this, that, and the other. But it also was more inclusive in terms of what I call the systems and more of the maintenance of those systems. I mean, air filters, making sure that certain things are up to code, day-to-day, types of maintenance issues that are there. And I was under the impression that the library was interested in the town doing some of those things. So I think that was one area there. I guess it's more on Article 2 that I'm a little bit confused when I see the second draft. It states, for instance, the trustees by state law are custodians of the building and the land have been since 1901. think sometimes this is where some of the difficulties, lie, and maybe this is where we can try to define a little bit more fully what roles the trustees in the library and the town want in terms of that maintenance. Because I will say that probably, at least from my perspective, and I can't speak for Phil and the staff, but my feeling is that, we know that there is some, so we say, discussion as to whose responsibility certain parts of that maintenance are, and by defining who's going to be responsible for it, and, or as Lou said, contracting with the town to do that, because we may have staff that's there, or at least be able to arrange that might be a goal, a common goal. But if I think it's difficult if they're going to do just some of it and not all of it, unless we very, very carefully define what each side is going to do, because, then you get into, well, I thought he was going to do it. No, I thought he was going to do it. And that kind of defeats the purpose of trying to figure out, where that should lie. So I do think that it'd be beneficial to try to figure out just exactly how much of that maintenance is going to be the town, and how much of it may be contracted through the library. I think that would help us avoid, shall we say, either time delays or as they say, whose job responsibility is it, so to speak, and get that hammered out. So I think that's one area. I think one of the other critical issues that I still have in my mind, and there's and it's been alluded to, that the library is coming up with a personnel policy. One of the concerns continues to be, at least from my perspective as a board member who's been working with the library for pretty close to 9 years, is that there seems to be convenience to follow some of the town policies and personnel policies when they're desirable, and when they're not, then we can afford to be different. And we're both trying to use, and I think agree to some degree, that there needs to be some uniformity so that there is conformity and compliance with what I call basically the human relations or personnel side. I think is one of the bigger issues. The statute is deliberately vague. We've spent a lot of hours on both sides determining what rights and responsibilities that the library has under their RSA, and then under ours in terms of the town, in terms of its policy. And there's definitely conflicts. Things like the day off for birthday, things like closing offices due to inclement weather. I mean, there's definitely areas that are in direct conflict. And my concern is when we start getting into the human resource side, you start looking at equal credit, equal employment opportunity. You start looking at liability from the two different personnels that we have responsibility for in terms of our employment, our employees, the fairness of that, and yet we're sitting there struggling with and recognizing that there's certainly value to having the library and the town work more effectively together for just from a cost standpoint, from just a lot of different things that we can do together more efficiently than we can separately, even though our respective statutes that we operate under give us those powers, hence the agreement. I think it's a step in the right direction. I know it's been difficult. I can see attorneys, shall we say, getting their 2 cents worth in all the way around. I think what that's going to do is it's going to maybe make it more difficult for us to come to what I call a reasonableness test and saying, what are we really trying to accomplish? We want a good library, and we want it to operate efficiently, and we want it to be for the benefit of our citizens, and just as we would for, you know, for the different town departments. And I think part of that may be perception, is those differences can create issues. And I dare say employees today are much more cognizant of what I'm going to call fairness, equality, and all those other, shall we say, less than specific areas of conflict. So we may be finding ourselves, even though we've been able to live with common ground in the past, but I think we seem to be evolving as a society more into, is it fair, is it equal, is it the same for everybody, are we in compliance with regulations and rules, and what are the liabilities for not doing that? One of my concerns would be if we're handling some of the HR and classifications and payrolls through the town, and let's say it goes out and it's in your jurisdiction, and yet we have common liability insurances and other things, we're going to be in a situation where there may be direct conflict. Employees, citizens, others are going to pick us up on it, and we're going to end up, you know, what I call, you know, long-term standings in court, spending a lot of money that probably neither one of us intended to happen. So I just think that, and a question I had, Phil, because I just saw this morning for the first time, was in terms of the library coming up with a personnel policy. I don't know, I haven't seen it. I noticed it was going to be probably done within 30 days, and I think regardless of where we go with this thing, that's a good thing to do. Because it certainly has given the town, by having a personnel policy, it's given us some teeth to make decisions when they have to be made, but also it tells our employees exactly what they, you know, can and should expect. And so it works, it cuts both ways, you know, from that perspective. So if that policy is there and is in place, it may put the town in a position where there's less liability if library trustees make a decision that's different than what the town would under its policies, guidelines. I think that's an important piece somehow that we need to bring some resolution to. I guess I'll leave it at that just for the time being.
Okay, Peter, thanks. Lou?
Well, one of the things that, you know, without mentioning it, that I think Peter is sort of alluding to, is that it's not just a matter of New Hampshire law. That the status of an employee, is whether he's an employee of the library or an employee of the town, or maybe an employee of both in a federal agency and a federal court. And that's what's of concern to us, that it's not just a matter of a revised statutes annotated saying library employees are employees of the library. That might not be respected by federal agencies and federal courts. Indeed, we think that it would not necessarily be respected. And so that's why we're concerned about, you know, if the policies are going to be different, that they at least be aligned. You know, if it's a library policy, let the library policy align itself with the town policy and vice versa.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Excuse me. That is my biggest concern, is the personnel issue, because as I had thought for a while, by us doing the processing, and just so you know, you're familiar with it, but I'll go over it really quickly. The library will put out an ad for a request to hire an employee. It gets published in the newspaper, the library folks interview, hire the person, but we do the processing, the intake, the payroll intake, and then the employee goes over to the library and does his or her duties, but number one, their paycheck still says the town of Meredith on it. Number two, as Lou said, there is a case that says that library employees are the employees of the library regardless of what their check says, but the caveat is in the state of New Hampshire. There is a body of law that shows that library employees, the library and the town could be considered a joint employer when it comes to issues that would go in front of federal agencies. And a good example that's been brought to date recently is the McDonald's Corporation. The National Labor Relations Board has determined that McDonald's Corporation and the franchisees are joint employers of the franchisee's employees. And as you all may know, usually a franchisee owns a McDonald's, he or she makes the decisions to hire, fire, etc. But now they're saying McDonald's has joint responsibility. That relationship's greatly detached if you look compared to the one that the town has. Like I said, we do the in-processing, the out-processing, benefits, etc. We have joint insurances, and that's my concern, again, is because if our policies aren't adhered to, which are, a lot of work has gone into our personnel policy and has gone into the personnel policy edit, it's been vetted by our labor council, and we also make administrative regulations that mirror that policy. And I'm not saying that the library doesn't follow them, but without some type of relationship, we can't verify that. I can't sit down in a deposition and say, are all the employees trained? Do all the employees follow this? I can't do that. I can say yes from the town side, but I respectfully can't say that because I don't run the day-to-day operations of the library. That's my concern.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The library was autonomous, to my understanding, from looking at the minutes of the library trustees until 1993, when there was some issues with the payroll. The library largely, it became bigger than it had been before. There was a recent renovation. And so the trustees were thinking of contracting with an accountant. And the town came to the trustees and said, let us take over your payroll, let us take over your bills, you'll still have your control over the library. It seems over the years, it's morphed a bit more and more. And so we were just trying to get into writing what those responsibilities have been. But I understand what Phil is saying.
Let me ask you a question here. I don't know if the trustees have had this conversation, and I'll be very frank. Have you discussed cutting the cord from the town? And is it a viable option? Have you thought about it as far as, we'd really like to do this, but we feel like the Board of Selectmen don't want us to do this? I mean, if the library wants to do it, maybe we should have that discussion instead of trying to come up with a memo of understanding.
The point of the memo of understanding was clearly just to delineate what we've already been doing. Truly, it was not a document to create any type of animosity between the two boards. It was created to sort of delineate, like you say, Peter, right here, snow removal, lawn mowing, weed whacking, and just to get it on the books that this is what you guys do for us, this is what we do for you. And for the $8,500, that's what the payroll service is. That's where this all sort of started, and it's starting to take on a whole new life. Sometimes I think that because of problems in the past regarding reclassification. So if that's a discussion we need to have, then we need to decide that, what's that going to be? We have not sort of sat down as a board and said, let's break away from the town, what would that look like? Or do we want to be aligned with the town? I think that's something that people always will consider. Of course, fiscally today, insurance, health insurance is going to be the number one thing. And if they cannot sort of campaign for their own health insurer, that would be very costly for a small group of people. If one or two get sick, we both know that that's going to be a raise. So there's those other details that make it significantly more complex than just, we're going to break away from the town.
It's a complicated situation, really.
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair?
go ahead.
What does it look like in other towns? What does it look like in Gilmington or Laconia? Are they? Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know, and
I did put an informal poll out. There's a listserv that all the librarians in New Hampshire belong to. Put out an informal poll to ask how many have the type of relationship that we have. And I did have 30 reply that it's a similar relationship. I know that there's more. And according to Tom Ladd, who used to work for the state library, he said it's kind of a 50-50. Some libraries have complete autonomy. They have complete control. They just get money from the town and they do everything on their own. And other libraries do it the way that we do it. And then in city libraries, which I believe is according to New Hampshire law, they are city employees.
that's different. That's why
Correct.
we're taking back Laconia. Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I take back Laconia and I meant Gilmington. Thank you.
Well,
You know, on that subject, if Andrew Carnegie was the guy who established your library, you've got a big fund, and it's just a very different thing. Different communities are a lot wealthier than we are, or many libraries are a lot wealthier than you are. And if wealth helps with independence, when you say, I thought that, you know, I'm new to this relationship, but I thought that the memorandum of understanding was an attempt not to freeze the relationship in amber, but to improve it. And so when, you know, I'm coming back now to the maintenance issues. We thought that maybe the answer is it would be more economical and make more sense and relieve you of an obligation to take on the maintenance. And indeed, I think Phil at one point suggested, well, that might mean that we'd have to, you know, beef up, hire somebody more for the for buildings and grounds, and we're prepared to do that. But if you want to go looking for plumbers, that's up to you. I mean, you know, it might be that if the town and the library use the same plumber, we get a better deal. So that, you know, now I'm only talking about the maintenance thing, and I do not believe that contracting the library, contracting with the town for the town to do day-to-day maintenance cedes the statutory control that the library trustees have. It's just like saying, well, we're contracting for weed whacking. It's a little bit more, but it's not giving up your control, because you can terminate that contract at any time. And it's day-to-day. It's not control of the library or control of the library operations. It's control of the building, basically day-to-day. So we thought that that was an improvement. We thought that that would maybe make for savings for both the town and the library and relieve you of the necessity of taking care of maintenance.
Aaron?
I'm wondering if this is an issue that perhaps Phil and I and Mike Fowler and Paul Rosano could discuss of what it would take to make something like that happen behind the scenes. And it's not, I don't feel the need to be relieved of it. I don't mind doing it. I like being able to call a plumber when I need to call a plumber. That doesn't bother me. But if we're looking at a way to save the town money, then I think the trustees would agree to at least discussing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, you are correct that this was sort of the stable document, and then hopefully by these discussions that we bring more into it so that there is more clarity. Absolutely. That it's not a frozen document. That was not my intent to say, but it's trying to delineate where we are, where we've been, where we need to go. Some of these issues.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
When Hillary asked the question, where have others gone, that's precisely the issue. This is not new. Most of you who have been in town for any period of time, you know, are well aware that there is a library board of trustees and there is the board of selectmen, and we each have the power and the authority and the responsibilities as defined by the statutes. Again, I'm going to cite that we both recognize that there are shortcomings in those definitions per the New Hampshire laws, and that's part of why probably 50% of the communities that are out there operate some sort of a quasi type of arrangement of understanding similar to what we're trying to refine. And I like Lou's concept. It's not to restrict anybody, it's just so that we can eliminate the guesswork. Is it my turn? Is it their turn? And those types of things. And we know that if we have a contractor that's on call that has a relationship with a larger entity, they typically have better response type, better pricing, all those kinds of, they become familiar with the properties, all those kinds of things that I think can benefit the town and the library and the taxpayers. So I think that's the spirit. I want to keep it on. One of the choices is, some are very independent and say, we want to be out on our own. Under the law as we see it, that's the way we're going to do it. They have huge endowments, and they're able to do that. Others have been much more pragmatic about it and said, there's got to be a way that we can make this thing work and just understand who's going to be responsible, for what part of it. I would be very interested in terms of my own thought process of seeing that library personnel policy and seeing something in place. That way, there is an expectation as well in terms of what differences there may be. It's not a question, are they identical, but are they workable? Are they explainable? And is there a policy in place that governs the response and the behaviors of both employees and employers? So I think that's an important piece. If it's strong enough and it's written well enough, it's close enough to the town policy that we have, that makes me feel a little bit better about the potential for liability, non-compliance, and some of the other things that can happen when people don't have a roadmap to go by. I'm encouraged. I'm still encouraged.
Madam Chair, just briefly, one of the points that was brought up is that this document, well, it wasn't the document, the relationship started in the 90s when the selectmen went to the library trustees and asked to take it over. One of the biggest changes that's happened between the 90s and 2014 is the litigation landscape. It's become it's been pushed much more to the forefront. In the 90s, issues such as this where we weren't, and most of the other agencies weren't as concerned with the, and I'll use the term cradle to grave exposure and liability, where now we're worried, about from before we hire someone to when they separate service. So it's become a much larger concern where I'm sure when this relationship was first proposed, it was nowhere near where it is today.
Well, and same thing with the RSA 202A, when was that written? I imagine things were a little bit different then. My personal opinion is that law needs to be rewritten, but that hell will freeze before that happens. Paul, would you like to speak?
Am I on there? Yeah. I think with regard to the mechanics of running a building, the ground, equal ground can be found very easily there. It's just, like you say, who's done what for. But you guys run a municipal corporation, and we run an educational institution. And you can't make them look the same. So you started to crowd people that work for a municipal corporation into the slots, people that work for an educational organization. And I think that needs to be kept in mind, that our purposes are so vastly different that the whole concept of how you go about running that kind of institution is very, very different from running a municipal corporation. And that should be kept in mind.
It's a good point, Paul. Thank you.
Hi, Jim Hughes, Meredith.
Thank you.
One of the things the board should do is go back to look during the time of Peter Russell. We had this same situation with the library at that time, and Peter Russell was saying to the board, it's the trustees' responsibility to run the library, and we supply the cash within reason. And then there was a memorandum of understanding that was developed and put into print by Peter Russell and the library trustees. And I think that should be looked up and see where it is. I was a member of the board at the time, but that's back more years than I can immediately remember. But I know a lot of the periphery, but the detail you leave to those who are being paid well to manage our finances and see that the town is in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Well, I'm actually going to ask you, Phil, for any recommendations that you might have going forward at this point this afternoon, because we could talk about this for 5 hours and And I'm not sure where to go with it at this point.
I don't have one to offer. I really don't. I mean, it's a decision of the board to
Madam
decide
Chair,
how they'd like to proceed.
Hillary?
I actually liked Erin's idea of maybe getting together and working in tandem to try and come up with something and that's more mutually acceptable between maybe Phil, herself, Mike Fowler, and what that would look like, and possibly just kind of sort of table this until we get that type of something. I don't know.
Well, it's a good start.
I think it would. That's what I think that would be a great starting block.
Madam Chair, the only thing I'd ask with that is that Erin and I would meet, and then I could deal with staff. Instead of having everybody at the table, it gets a little unwieldy. So, but, I mean, Erin and I can meet and work it out, and then I can just nail down the specifics with Mike and Paul, or whoever I need to nail them down with.
You okay with that, Erin?
Would you like us to begin, I mean, we're going to draft a policy, we're going to draft a library policy.
Personnel policy.
Personnel policy, we certainly can look at components of the town. I think it should look different just because of liability issues, but we're not going to go so far on a limb that it's not going to be, so that's something that we can bring back. Is that what I'm hearing you would like to see?
That's what I'd like to see.
Okay.
Well, it did say, I don't know what page it's on, but in 30 days, that doesn't necessarily have to happen in 30 days, but, so we can work on that, and you can work on meeting with Phil, and maybe we'll just, in the meantime, we can both boards can maybe come up with some different ideas, and
One other idea I would like to see is if the library director can go again to the town manager staff meetings. That was very beneficial for us as trustees to keep a connection, open communication between the two, because we do work together. And that sort of seemed to have gone away, and I'm not really sure why, but I would like that to come back.
Madam Chair?
yeah.
As the library has stated, they are not a town department. The school is not a town department. Neither the school nor the library participate in it because we have an inherent conflict between the goals, needs, and processes of the town and of the library. And that's not a bad thing. That's a straight-up example. There are many discussions that go on at this department head meeting of departments that fall under the control of the town manager that would not be appropriate to be had with non-departments. Simply said, it's not a public meeting. It's a staff meeting of town departments. So I would respectfully deny that request, or respectfully not want to be forced into that position.
Phil, how often do you meet with Erin right now?
It's on an as-needed basis.
Maybe the two of you should start meeting on a regular basis, once every 2 months or something like that, and that way you're having better communication with Phil. Just a thought. How does the board think about that?
All in favor?
Quarterly, just
You
an
okay with that?
Yep, I'm fine with that.
Whatever makes most sense.
That can be scheduled,
That would be great, thank you.
Erin, and
Yes.
And obviously as needed.
Madam Chair, may I throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing?
Sure.
Number one is, I think it all boils down to one thing. It boils down to people being placed on the labor scale that appropriate what the town thought. All the rest of the things seems to be in agreement. I think all it is little things here, who does what and stuff like that. I think we're getting things blown way out of hand we don't even need. That's just a personal opinion, but I've been around a long time, and I think the more things you write in, the more things you have to comply with, the more things you have to do. To me, I would remove 3/4 of the stuff and just go with a general agreement.
thanks, Nate. We're all good now? For now? Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I will recess the workshop. We'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back for the regular board meeting at approximately 5 o'clock. Workshop adjourned. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Meredith Select Board meeting of August 18th in the Meredith Community Center. And at this time, I would like you to stand and pledge allegiance. with me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members, Hillary Seeger,
Good evening.
Lou Kahn,
Good evening.
Nate Tor,
Good evening.
Peter Brothers, Vice Chair.
Good evening.
I am Carla Warren. This is Phil Warren, our town manager,
Good evening.
and Karen Landry, our recording clerk. Emergency exits are at the back and behind me, which I always forget, and tonight I remembered to mention that. And please silence your electronic devices. Do I have a motion to accept minutes of the August 4th meeting and town manager report?
We actually don't have minutes.
I can't move to accept what we don't have.
Right,
On the agenda.
right, but there's no minutes listed.
Scratch that.
We have them for the next meeting.
I'll make sure I don't write it on the agenda the next time. I don't need to do that. Are there any visitors and residents comments?
Town managers report.
I mean, I cannot talk about oil and,
Who wrote this agenda?
you ready?
Who's not on here, Phil?
Town manager report.
It's there, it just wasn't paragraphed.
Phil, would you like to give a town manager's report?
Sure.
Go right ahead.
Outside agency funding application process is in process. Wow, that's redundant. The applications have to be returned by September 15th. This is the annual process whereby the board receives requests for outside agency funding. The application process allows the board to better vet the requests. Present recipients of the funds receive notification of this year's process. We also post the information on Twitter and the website, as long as emailing the information to the local press. Old Hubbard Road paving is complete, shoulder gravel work and curb and swale work is being finished up. I received a couple of emails from a resident regarding the signage and the line striping on Route 25. If you are heading from Hannaford to the intersection, you will notice that the first set of arrows tells you you can only go straight and right. And the intention is that you should be able to go straight, right, and left. I can tell you that the reason that they alternate, because if you look at it, you'll see it's straight right, straight left, straight right, straight left, straight right, straight left. But it's confusing when the first one you hit is going straight and taking a right turn. It tells many people you can't take a left. I've asked DOT to look into this and possibly put another set of arrows just north of that is straight left. Furthermore, that same resident commented that maybe a sign on the traffic light stanchion might tell people as they roll up that they can take a left from both lanes. I've also asked DOT to put that same sign on the light stanchion. Yeah, it's, well, you can't put a straight right and left arrow because the manual for uniform traffic control devices dictates a certain size of the arrowhead, it just won't fit. So I could see that was their attempt to do it, but the first one should have been straight and left, because that's the more important movement, as we've learned on Sunday afternoon, as we've learned in 3 and 25 minutes. We met with our health insurance consultant last week, and we found out that our rate is running 60% of the premium. What that means is our claims are at 60% of our premium amount, which is great. Last year, our claims were at 59% of the premium amount. What that adds up to for us is that we should see a pretty favorable rate review this year. We don't expect any plan changes, and as I said, once that rate review is done, which should be favorable, I will get back to the board when I have more information. It's my understanding that the senior citizens group is going through some sort of transition. They were supposed to be in to discuss their future plans at this meeting, and they asked not to be included in the meeting. And I also was advised that one or two of the founding members may not be participating any longer. The craft fair is this weekend. The department heads involved, which is Police Chief, Fire Chief, Public Works Director, have reviewed it and have spoken with the staff at the chamber to make sure that issues that have come up in the past are addressed. And as always, boat registrations are available at the town hall. We take recycled used oil at the transfer station, and as a reminder, the police chief and fire chief informed me that you should still, and would like to inform you that you should still make sure your street number is visible from the street. It is of a different color of whatever it's mounted against, preferably reflective, so when it's lit up at night, people can see it, and that you clear your driveways from any brush that overhangs it so they can get into your property. And Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, Phil. And now, visitors and residents' comments. Are there any? Okay, moving right along. Under new business, nothing. Old business.
Comments?
Select board comments. Hillary.
Madam Chair, I just have a quick update from the Watershed Committee. The mural at Waukee Beach is complete. There's a really nice photo of it in my email that I forgot to send out to everybody. Sorry. I'll do that, and maybe we can put it someplace on a website or Facebook or Twitter so everybody can see it. They did a lovely job. And then the Watershed Committee did a like a 10 by 16 bifold or trifold of do's and don'ts, and then the rules for all the water, and they got all of those printed back, handed them out to the residents, and I think that, have you seen that yet? No, it's really, they did a nice job and they got it over there, so those are all out with everybody, and I look forward to the next meeting so that I can get updated, because I was out of town last time. Thank you.
Thanks, Hillary. That's a good update. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, yes, I had a couple of residents very upset, just talked to me about geese situation. I tried to explain to them, well, we're going to have goose soup, or no. I explained to them there's a lot of things we can't do. Phil, I'll let you handle the rest of that.
Okay, I knew I forgot something from my report. Yeah, geese. The first thing is, the common answer is, can we, and I will use the politically correct term, exterminate them? The answer is no. It's a 3-year process, and it is mainly because there are some federal regulations that come into play because they're migratory birds. You have to do a study that involves Fish and Game to show that the birds are native to the area. I spoke with a gentleman from the marina, and he informed me that they started this study, and it didn't appear to be as successful as they thought it would be, and they sort of abandoned it. So that's out of the question. The second piece is there are many readily available chemicals that you can spray that are touted to be non-toxic, but every single one of them either A, expressly says you don't put them down within 150 feet of a waterway or water body, or B, when questioned, there's one specific one we questioned on a couple of years ago, we asked them to affirmatively state you could use it within 150 feet of a waterway. They could not do that. Another strategy is to plant high hedges or bushes that interrupt their flight plan. I don't think, and board members correct me if I'm wrong, that there's any appetite to place a 4-foot high hedge the whole length of the park, thereby blocking the view of the lake.
No.
Unless you put a tunnel through.
Okay, a little device that I found on the internet that's been used with great success in different places of the country, and it covers about a 300 square foot area. And what it does is it has a little motion detector on it, the thing clicks on, it has a device that makes sound and moves and scares them away. They're $1,600 a pop. So we get down to the low-tech version that's worked in many other communities, is the coyote mannequin. The coyote mannequin, I don't know if you've seen them, it actually looks like a coyote. There's one that stands up, and there's another one that looks like the coyote's down getting ready to strike. Many communities in other parts of the country and in this area have had great success with them, but the key is you have to move them. So I'm gonna buy a couple of them, they're $70 a piece, we're gonna try them out, we're gonna move them around, and it was suggested to me by the gentleman from the marina that maybe they could become part of the sculpture. But all kidding aside, I worked in a community where they were very effective, but the key is you have to move them. So we're gonna buy a couple of them, we're gonna try them out. I don't know what else to do at this point. I mean, I really don't wanna put in hedge or spread I don't know if you've seen the fence, there's a 4-foot wire fence that you can spread out and then retract, that you can put up at the water's edge. I don't think we want that in our park, but nonetheless, we still have the goose dropping problem. So we'll try the coyotes, we'll see what happens.
My guess is, Madam Chairman, the coyotes will move mysteriously on their own.
That's what I was thinking.
Before you say that, we're also gonna put a game camera up to make sure the coyotes don't move. We have a couple of game cameras we've used to stop vandalism, so thank you, Peter, so we can get that warning out there.
So bear that in mind if you plan on stealing them.
Maybe you could put a little sign on the coyote that says, "This is a misdemeanor to touch this coyote."
Yeah, I don't know what to do, so I'm gonna try.
Madam Chairman,
That's good, yeah.
have you checked around to see whether any of the other waterfront communities or golf clubs or anything like that have contracted with these border collie people?
They're out there.
Yeah, they have. I'm also very familiar with it because of the community I lived in Massachusetts. There was a college there. They purchased a border collie, but they had it there and they trained a person on staff. Within 6 months, the geese were gone, they never came back, and now the dog has a job getting leased out to golf courses and various other institutions
And
around.
they discharged the person and now there's a federal claim, right?
Yeah. No, they still have the handler because they take the handler and the dog. Thanks, Lou. But the problem is that if you don't have somebody on staff and you don't have the dog there all the time, it's a short-term fix, the birds come back. I mean, it has to get programmed in their memory or however their minds work, that every time I come here, there's a dog, so I'm going somewhere else.
Well, I guess that was my question. If there is somebody else contracting around here, what would it cost us to get on his list for a season?
They charge by the day. It has nothing to do with, there's no bulk rate. They charge everybody the same amount by the day, and it adds up pretty
And
quick.
that's 7 days a week?
Well, that's what you'd have to do. Yeah, because if not, if you do it sporadically, you're only gonna kick them out for that short period of
I
time.
go for coyotes.
To be continued. Nate?
Madam Chair.
Sorry, Nate.
Oh, that's fine. Second thing was on the sculpture walk. I had a tremendous amount of people saying that this is great, and they love it, and just different pictures and things that are sent back, I think has done a wonderful publicity for Meredith. So again, I can't thank enough the people who contributed and got this together. Number 3 on my list here is, Phil, is there a timetable yet set for repaving of Main Street? Or have you discussed that or done anything further?
We just, Madam Chair, we just finished up Old Hubbard Road. We're gonna wait till we get all the bills in, which is a couple of weeks. And then we will make sure that there's enough money in the budget, and I will come back to the board with a proposal. It's definitely gonna be after Labor Day, whenever we do it.
And one final thing, just, well, it's for us and for everybody else, September 9th, primary. There'll be voting, and we also have to set ourselves up for who's covering what hours of voting. That's all I have.
Madam Chair?
And we should have to do that today because we're not meeting again until the 15th.
I would be happy to send an email out that we can respond to if you
Why
want.
don't we use the same schedule we had unless somebody
That's fine for me.
I'm fine with
Madam Chair.
Send out the schedule so that everybody remembers what we're doing.
Yeah, Phil will send it out and then we can just sign out.
Okay.
Yep.
Were you here at the last election?
No, and I do need to check with work to see, I mean, I can definitely cover for a few hours wherever you need me, but I just need to,
You'll get Herb Vadney's spot.
I need to just check with work. I have that, what's that thing I have to go to every day? Oh, job. That's it. Go that.
Okay, that's good.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Phil?
I just was presented with a solution. There's a drone available,
I knew that'd be next.
a drone that you can
Oh, my God.
get rid of the geese with. I'm guessing that if the device on the ground is $1,600, the drone may or may not be out of the price. It's a grant, yes. Eric?
Remember, you hit a goose and you end up in the Hudson River.
No.
You get the verdict in Missouri Police.
Oh.
Right. I'm actually considering purchasing one of those for my business, so maybe I could just offer
Lease
them
it.
free services
Oh, even better.
in my training.
Excellent.
Okay. Is there any other selectmen's comments? Any new business? Old business, 12-26, water exploration update. Phil?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping at this point that I would have Jamie Emery from Emery and Garrett in to discuss the status of the water exploration update. As I had said to you in one of my updates, we've kind of come to a bit of a pause in that because, as you remember, when Jamie was in here the last time, he pointed out that there may or may not be some areas of contamination in the vicinity of that well, and at that point, it didn't appear that it would be a matter of concern. Well, shortly after that, we were advised by DES that it is a matter of concern and that they wanted some more exploration work done and some more testing to be completed. I can tell you that the testing that's being completed is not at any cost to the town. It's being done on sites that may be potentially responsible parties. And if you look at what one of the contaminants was, it was MTBE, which was placed in gasoline. And I know there's always some anecdotal information that things may or may not have been buried on that site near that well, but it would have had to have been buried in the not too distant past to have, if it were a vehicle with gasoline in it, to have MTBE in it, because that was not always put in gasoline. So that's one of their bigger concerns. Jamie's been working with DES, and we expect that probably going to be at one of your October meetings, he will be in with a full presentation. It was kind of disappointing because Jamie's firm, Emery and Garrett, had spent a lot of time with DES, had done a lengthy proposal for this well, and the division that Jamie presented it to, when he left that meeting, he was very encouraged, and shortly thereafter, another division from DES commented that there may be a concern with this contamination in this area. So, again, I would have liked to have a more comprehensive report tonight, but that will have to be delayed until probably one of your October meetings.
Madam Chair, question for Phil. Have we gone any further in looking at any of the wells, or have we kind of stopped at that point because we've hit it dead end?
Well, we stopped a while back because most of the wells, well, first off, if you remember, we did a well off of Bonnie Shores and it had extremely low yield. We then looked at the wells that we had remaining, and they were so remote from our water system that even if they were successful wells, it would be a very large cost to get them into the water system, specifically the ones in Meredith Center or out in the Meredith Center area. You would think that because we have town water out there, it would be easy to do, but our town water, as it goes out there, because you can imagine the topography coming from in town down to Meredith Center, it's all a downhill trip, so we have pressure reducing valves in it, so it will not allow for two-way flow. So we would have to build the transmission line all the way back to probably the vicinity Golden View from Meredith Center to be able to feed into it. So the cost of doing that kind of prohibited us from looking at those other well sites.
Madam Chairman, Phil, just a follow-up. Wouldn't the main that goes out that way be too small anyway for any significant volume?
In the case of, let's say, a supplemental water supply, no, if we didn't have the pressure reducing valves, we could use it. The problem is they're basically check valves, and there's really no fix or runaround for them to be able to bypass them, because it only works one way. We never envisioned doing that when we put the system in, having a return transmission line.
And Could I follow up with that?
Yeah.
Is there any way that the old reservoir per se could be, I don't know, I could use the word reconstituted or something, so the water from there could be moved to the treatment plant and then pushed out from there?
I don't know, but my experience is that if you have a surface body of water, there's a lot of regulations that come into play to maintenance, security, treatment, and my guess would be that if you went to permit a surface body of water today, it would not look like Lake Waukesha, Lake Massabesic. It would be a secure area, and that's all, unfortunately, as a result of where our society is today, that it would not be permitted as they have been in the past. Then again, I haven't looked into it directly. That's just my, let's say, professional opinion at this point. We could look into it. I don't know how far you would want to go into it, whether it would just be a cursory look or we'd start to incur some charges. That would not be something that Emery and Garrett could do. We would probably have to speak with an engineering firm. I don't know what the board's thought is on that.
Well, that would totally interrupt that town park that we've newly created to maintain, right?
Well, if you had to throw a fence up around it, absolutely.
The trail goes all the way around
Right.
it, so.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yes, Peter?
I also think, I agree with Phil, based on prior, shall we say, discussion when the water committee was out there and just general conversation, that the open water source was pretty much off the table even then, and as you say, it was mostly due to what requirements it would have taken to satisfy that. So that's even why we looked at deep wells instead, for that very reason. But I'd say that's right off the table.
So we'll wait for Emery to come back in October.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Shift the geese to the road.
Next item is 12-27, Select Board Policy, just a little bit of an update for the public. We've been working on creating a Select Board policy for the town, basically for the residents to understand a little bit better what the Select Board's jobs and duties are, and also for, as an aid, I guess you could say, for new Select Board members to sort of understand what their roles and duties are. And we have, I think Phil brought all of you a copy of the draft number 2, which is Phil's copy. I'm sorry, Lou has made a bunch of changes to another version of the draft, which what I'm going to do at this point is just go through Phil's copy with all of you, and I'm just going to highlight quickly just basic, simple corrections, and then that way we're not all repeating each other. And then after we do that, then if you guys have additional comments or changes, then we can do that. Hillary?
Madam Chair, I just, and I'm new, so this is probably something that's going to help me, but I question this being part of the regular meeting as opposed to a workshop meeting, and I'm just curious why we would be working on a draft policy rather than at a workshop here, where this would seem to me we'd be looking at a final policy that we'd be voting and motioning on.
That is a good point. We decided that we would just go through it. It's pretty much in its final stages, Hillary, with the exception of grammatical corrections or spelling corrections or, items that we don't really need to have lengthy discussion about. So the intention was to make those corrections or agree to those corrections tonight and then just vote on it. If the board isn't comfortable with that, then we won't do that. Well,
I'm a little confused as to what you propose. I had made some, editorial corrections and, in some cases, legal corrections and suggestions, and I'm wondering what it is you're planning to do with those. I mean, I had hoped
I
that...
included those in the draft that we're about to read through.
Oh, okay, I hadn't understood that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought I said that. I'm sorry, though. I put your corrections also in that draft.
Okay.
So on page 1, we strike the first line, no and all persons by these presents. Down Under C, the last word, members, is struck to just end with authority to the select board. Down under the note, also on the first page, we would add or vice chair to the end of that note paragraph. Page 2, there was nothing. Page 3, the only correction was the first paragraph was just the parentheses were incorrect. Page 4 at the bottom, 41:40 is just to be moved over behind the and. Page 5, under business protocols, bottom line, administrator is changed to manager. Under B, minutes, bottom line, administrator is changed to manager. Under D, emergency meetings, less than 24 hours notice is the change there. Page 6. The letter I becomes G, the letter J becomes H, the letter G becomes I. Does that make sense? After F, they're just incorrect. And then lack of quorum, paragraph at the bottom, strike the period and change the N on no to small n. Page 7, first paragraph, more than one select board member. At the bottom line should be more than 2 select board members. And then also on this page, H, capital H is J, capital I is K, and so on down the page. Those are just all incorrect. And then the very bottom line on page 7, select board members, there's a comma there that should be changed to a period. Page 8, capital M is O, under political issues. Under selection board members code of conduct, A, select board meetings, strike members. Under B, down at the bottom, number 1, instead of don't, it's do not. And strike, understand the doctrine of estoppel can be a double-edged sword. Page 9, number 5 at the top, don't is do not. And number 6, don't is do not. Number 12, halfway down the page, the last line in parentheses, of a personal nature as well as creating town liability. That, in my mind, seemed to need to be rewritten, so we can discuss that after. Page 10, the only thing there is the space after D, relationship with other town boards, as there were spaces with all of the other ones. Page 11, number 3, members of the Board of Select Board member, that just needs to be corrected. Strike Board ofs and put Select Board. And then down second half of the page, number 2, members of the Select Board change are encouraged to should communicate. Page 12, number 1, communicating with a reporter, period, and strike the and, then capital K, keep in mind. But such remarks should be used very judiciously is stricken on that last line of group number 1. Number 3, the last sentence of number 3, differ from that of, inserted the board. Most of these, Lou, are on your corrections, so you don't need to be, I'm sure you're understanding these.
Yeah, I'm just not understanding which ones, if you're passing over them, does that mean you don't agree with them?
I'm not passing over anything. I'm
Okay.
reading out loud your changes and my changes and Phil's changes. That's all I have. And then when we go through that, then the rest of the board members can add any changes that they made. Seeing how this is on the agenda, this was the only way that I could see to do it.
Carl, all I'm saying is, I had a number of other things, like, adding a sentence at the end of 4 in this one, and I didn't understand
Yours,
whether or not you were going to take that up
you
later.
can, you can bring those up later, Lou. I couldn't read your handwritten writing, so I thought you could add those in at the end.
That's fine.
And so then on page 12, number 2 is all of it, the whole line is struck under ethics. Under K, the last line, meet these obligations, is struck and replaced with comply. And that's all of it. Now, if members would like to just go ahead and add changes.
All right, I had suggested on page 3 that one of the things that we ought to have as a list, in the list of duties and responsibilities, is appointment of town manager, which apparently is not a statutory section. I know that there are statutes that talk about towns having town managers, but nowhere in this list does it say that the select board appoints a town manager.
That's a good point. So we'll make a note on this copy to add that in.
Okay. I thought, this is just curiosity, interesting. On page 4, I was interested in what an extent against the tax collector is, and so I looked it up. An extent against the tax collector is a requirement that the tax collector pay over the taxes collected. But there's a section. I don't know that you'd ever do it. I thought on page 6, at the top of the page, that it would be useful to add that the select board cannot legally preside over hearings when such responsibilities or decision-making authority is or concerns a matter appropriate for decision by the courts or has been delegated by statute to some other party. I just thought that we have on occasion been asked to do things with respect to real estate title, most recently, where it's just, there is no statute that delegates or doesn't delegate authority, but basically it's something that we don't do and that it's appropriate only for the courts. So I thought it might be useful to add something in there.
Phil, would you like to add your legal background? Just,
I don't think there's a problem with that, and I think that's a good example of why it should be in there.
If I haven't written it nicely, I don't mind rewriting it, or somebody could rewrite it.
Just, it's the point. So what page was that on?
6 at the top.
And I don't know that I wrote it quite well. All right, on
page 7, I thought that in I, although I'm not sure whether or not that I became something else, but the next to the last line was the will of the majority. I just didn't think it was, the majority was expressing a will, I think they were expressing a view. And I just thought the word view should be substituted for the word will.
Everyone okay with that?
Over on page 8,
How about something like consensus?
I don't know that there's ever a consensus reached. You could have someone say that they've got a problem, and the 4 other members could go off in completely different directions, but all conclude that it's not a problem. Or some of them would conclude it is a problem, and some of them wouldn't.
I like you. I think it sums it up best in these.
Okay.
It's okay, I can,
Over on page 8, I thought that not only should we not endorse specific candidates for elected office, but we shouldn't be endorsing political parties as selectmen. We can do whatever we want as private citizens.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
while I agree with Lou, I will also respectfully disagree with him, because the separation of a private citizen from being a member of the Board of Selectmen is a very hard line to draw. There have been occasions in the past with certain boards, and I think this board may have gone through that prior to my tenure, where members stated that they were now taking a position not as a member of the Select Board, but as a member of the public, and there becomes an inherent conflict with that. That would be my only concern, was that you would then be, let's say, going, in my opinion, and again, it's only my opinion, you'd be going a little bit too far in telling members of the Select Board that...
Withdrawn.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I interrupt just for a second while we're on that one? Excuse me, Lou.
Go ahead, Hillary.
I still appreciate, I want to keep my right to put my signs in the yard and to work behind the scenes for the elections for the people that I want to do, because I'm very active in that. So is that something that you're trying to discourage us from doing?
Not at all.
Or just here at the meetings say we shouldn't?
There is an RSA that specifically states that maybe we could have the town manager look that up, because it does specifically say something about board members.
Yeah, there isn't, I mean...
It
this is-
specifically says that board is nonpartisan.
Yeah, right, exactly,
So
that's
that
it.
if you're going to run for the select board, you shouldn't say, as a member said several years ago, I am a Republican, and I will bring a Republican view to the select board. That's a no-no.
That's absolutely right, and I think that's what you're referring to, Carla, but the discussion as to what your board does and how it treats, let's say, candidates and elected members of partisan boards, commissions, senates, House, that's strictly a board decision. And if you looked in the Union Leader a few weeks ago, you see there was some communities south of here that were wrestling with that. There is no preclusion for the select board, if they choose to let's say, entertain a motion to bring in a partisan candidate or bring in anybody they want to speak. And that specific issue was discussed, as I said, in communities that were south of here. I mean, the board can take the position that they don't want to do that, but it's not specifically said in the RSA that they can or can't do it.
Well, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm not referring to bringing somebody here to speak, because my personal opinion is this is not a place to be campaigning or politicking. And that's my feeling on that. What I'm saying is that I go out and speak in favor at organizations that I'm a member of. I have signs in my yard, and I do behind-the-scenes work for, publicly behind-the-scenes work for the candidates of my choice. And I don't want my tenure on the select board to restrict me from doing that. But I'm not asking to bring people here or sit here with a t-shirt proclaiming my candidate of choice.
Well, it says while acting at a public meeting, or in any official capacity. So as far as the public meeting, I'm okay with that, but in any official capacity, so if we're working the polls, which we're required to do, then maybe we should remove that from here if that's what the board wants to do.
Right, and if we're working the polls, I
That's up
shouldn't
to
be
the
sitting
board.
there wearing a hat with somebody's name on it. I mean, I don't think you can anyway.
I would suggest maybe that that the restriction should apply while acting at a public meeting under town auspices. You want to have a meeting of the PTA and endorse a candidate, have a wonderful time. But a public meeting, organized under town auspices or in an official capacity.
Mike, I have a little heartburn with the official capacity, because again, where does the line get drawn? You could be in an official capacity at the post office, as many of you are, and where does the line get drawn? Because people will approach you as a selectman at the post office, or in the grocery store. They may approach you as a selectman and vice versa.
I have a suggestion. This is really it's not what you should or shouldn't do, it's to more offer guidance. So instead of, say, select board members should refrain from endorsing, if something, more conditional, like they should exercise good judgment or something like that. Because, like, for instance, I've always been a firm believer that when we elect each other to the position, that's been an official capacity as chairman and vice chairman, that it shows, number one, your willingness to serve. If you vote for yourself, why wouldn't I?
Well, Peter, I don't think
I
it was ever intended to go that far.
But I'm just saying, if you read the words, that's what it says. So maybe it just should exercise care or restraint in terms of endorsing that. Because I see it more as a guidance to whatever. But this one here is saying you shouldn't do it, period. Like Hillary, I'm not sure I want to.
Well, I don't think it really reaches Hillary's issue, but if you're concerned about, Owen endorsing you as vice chair, let's make the change.
Well, the point was just to offer comments on it, and it's not life or death here. It's and it's also a guideline. So, should or practice restraint or whatever, versus shall not, I think is the point.
So let's get some different verbiage.
Well, let's get the language down.
Yes.
Okay.
Should exercise care. Or whatever.
And Madam Chair, that's where you get into just defining a public meeting. I could be standing on stage at the Zach Brown concert, that's in public, but it's...
We already dealt with that.
Okay.
Under town auspices.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all.
They don't
Only
usually-
town auspices.
They don't usually let me on stage at the Zach Brown concerts, so we're good.
But if you want to endorse someone at the concert, that's up to you.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
So what do we have come up
And the
with?
signs on your lawn are fine.
Well, if you want to work on a few areas of this document, maybe, what do you feel about just tabling the decision to,
Table political issues.
or
See if we can come up with-
table a vote on the document for tonight, but, we can certainly work on it for a few minutes.
Well, why don't we go on, and, I think that that particular section could be massaged, and we can probably come up with something that pleases everybody, or that doesn't displease anyone. All right?
Keep going,
Now-
guys.
If I can continue?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. You raised something we're dealing with, or will. I suggest, Carla, you frequently look down the end at me and say, in effect, why aren't you saying something in the deliberations? Well, I wanted to take out the word all, that you should actively participate in deliberations, but not necessarily in everything, because if you don't have something to say, you don't say it.
That's great, strike all, and I don't remember saying that to you.
Oh, well, no, you never said it. You always look at me like,
How about from now on, I'll just look straight forward, and if you would like to address the chair, you can just do that. How
Carla,
about
I
that?
apologize, but I felt pressured.
I won't look at you again, so if you do want to speak, you're gonna have to speak up. Moving right along, Lou.
I think that when we're I've moved over to page 9. One thing that we don't say anything about, it seems to be, sort of a secret, that the board has salaries. And I think that when you say that board members are covered, but they are not eligible for any other employee benefits, yeah, they're eligible to whatever. I assume the board salaries have been set at some point by the board. I don't remember. Have they ever gone to town meeting?
No,
So is the salary
they were
considered
adjusted was
employee
about 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was just before I got here.
Is salary considered a benefit?
It's actually a stipend, it's not.
Well, you may not think that it's a
Stipend.
benefit because it's not worth what you put in, but, yeah.
I want to get even with that minus 9 cents an hour. I'm telling you right now. Bring it up to nothing.
So,
Other than compensation as may be set from time to time by the board.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
Okay. I'm not sure where we are on page 10. I had a couple of, I tried to take out the word due process. I don't know, Carla, was that something that we said?
I didn't do anything with that one. With or without due process, you want it to be specific process?
Yeah. The due process has a sort of a 14th Amendment kind of thing that I'm not sure that we would ever really get into.
So under number 3 for the rest of you guys?
Yeah, and I didn't really, and I didn't think that the sentence regarding the oath of office had really anything to do with anything. I thought the oath of office was a statutory thing. So we don't write oaths of office. I would just strike that sentence out.
Which were you referring to?
It's just right after it.
Right after,
Accordingly.
accordingly to, it is important.
I don't think we need it.
I have to agree.
And then in 4, I wanted to add at the end there, consistent with the majority viewpoint of the board to the extent known and practical. I mean, you might not know, when you're serving on another committee, what the majority viewpoint of the board is. If you knew, maybe you should pay attention to it. Okay? Then,
1 second. So what are we going to?
I would add before the word practical, to the extent known and practical. Ordinarily, when you're on the planning board, you don't necessarily know on any particular subject what the view of the board is. You might guess. All right, then at the bottom of the page in 3, I think that's where I put it. I thought it would be useful to have a sentence that says, town business should not be conducted by exchanges of emails or text messages, since that seems to be a trap that we fall into fairly frequently.
But isn't that covered in 3?
Yeah, about that, it says
All
this includes...
communications between select boards may be considered public documents. This includes emails, handwritten notes, select board records.
Yeah, but it doesn't say don't do it. That's what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is, let's not conduct business by emails and text messages.
Yes, Phil?
I have a slight concern with that because there are many instances that it's appropriate for a select board member to contact, in this case, the town manager, by email. It's nothing different than when years ago you would write a note to the town manager.
Suppose we said exchanges between select board members of emails and text messages.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the serial conversation. Absolutely.
That's what I'm worried about.
Okay.
See, I think the serial conversation is an important piece of that if you're going to put it in.
Okay, yeah, well then,
I'll put something in.
okay. Put that one also on the table.
respect the chain of command. I have absolutely no idea what the chain of command is in the town. So at least I would lowercase it. Because when you say, capital C, it implies that there's a document somewhere that says what that is. So that's all I wanted to do, was lower C.
Okay, gotcha.
The only reason I had I'm over on page 11 now. On page, I guess it's G2, I had suggested generally should communicate with the town attorney through the office of the town manager. The only reason I said generally is because, then it goes on further down that says sometimes you can communicate directly with the attorney.
So noted.
So I would like to reinstate the word generally should, instead of are encouraged.
Members of the select board generally should communicate with the town.
Right.
Yep.
Through the town manager. All right, I'm not sure, I went over to page 12 at the top of the page. I'm not sure which of the changes that I suggested there, I think you did strike out such remarks should be made.
Remove and keep, and then but such remarks.
Fine, okay.
I struck that.
All right, then down, paragraph below that, I wanted to add a sentence that said that when you're speaking to the media and offering a personal viewpoint that may differ from that of the board, in such case, the member should clearly state that the view expressed is personal and not necessarily that of the board. I mean, that's almost like rubric.
Say it again.
In such case.
I can't type that fast.
Pardon? Oh, I didn't realize you were taking them in.
Well, I'm doing some of them,
He's
yeah.
making changes.
In such case, comma, the
Oh,
member.
yeah, it's in your written one, I got it.
It's in my written one, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right, then, thanks, Carl.
All right.
End it.
And I think the only other suggestion I had was on page 13, that rather than having witness whereof and an attestation, that we just sign the thing and adopt it by signing it.
Take it out. That. Leave it in,
It doesn't matter to me. I'm not a lawyer. What would the lawyer say? Take it out.
The lawyer says it's your call. But, if you sign it, we've adopted it.
Let's put it this way. I think we talked a little bit about this, but no everybody's presence. There is old language that did some of these, and this is more of a updated guideline of behavior. So
no old men by these presence
is
what we lawyers
just
call
say,
boilerplate.
we've adopted, have a debate is absolutely fine.
How about this, we replace it with this, whatever it ends up being called, was adopted by the Board of Selectmen on a vote,
On the date.
by a vote on such and such date.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds good.
We'll put that in once you vote on it.
all right, save your
Operational
signatures.
guidelines.
Is that what we're calling it? Operational guidelines.
And with that, Carla, Madam Chairman, I am done.
Moving right along. Who else? Anybody else? Hillary?
I just had a couple of things on here, and this may or may not be the time to discuss this piece, but I'm going to bring it up and you can tell me. Voting on select board members' liaison assignments, you're talking about the liaison assignments and...
What page?
I'm sorry, on page 1, ex officio to the planning board,
Okay.
watershed, all of that.
Yep.
And I really think with everything that's going on, it might be a good idea to add somebody to go over an ex officio with the library, but that's, again, probably not now is the time to, I just think that would be a good idea.
I'll be in some of the same issues.
I do not agree.
Yeah.
I think that a certain separation between the two entities is desirable. Not
Not war, but a certain separation.
Well, and if it gets to that point where we decide we want to do that, we can just amend this and
Oh, absolutely.
vote to amend it, so that's,
Okay, so I brought it up at the wrong time, but I just thought it would be a good time
It's
to look. I had a couple of other things that I circled, if you'll bear with me. The chain of command piece, let me find the page that that's on. The chain of command piece that Lou brought up earlier, it's toward the end on page 10. That's a very authoritarian statement, and it just doesn't sit well with me. It's saying that we're respecting a chain of command. To me, that's respecting upward to down, and just doesn't feel right. I mean, I think we should maybe change that to the authority of the town manager rather than chain of command.
I have a suggestion, and that is, it's requested select board members strike out respect the chain of command. Generally, add the word generally instead, deal with staff issues or requests for information through the office of the town manager.
Madam Chair, I agree with Lou. I like that verbiage a lot.
We did have a problem some years ago
Get that
when
from-
one of the select board members had a way of calling up the department heads and telling them what to do without going through the town manager. It became a real issue.
I'll wait on the bottom of town.
I just don't understand.
I don't like the chain of command at this point. We don't have a chain of command. Something else.
So you want it, I'm sorry, instead of respect the chain of command, what are we putting in?
Strike out respect the chain of command and put in generally.
members generally deal with staff. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, through the town manager.
Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thanks, Lori.
That was a good choice.
Peter and Nate, anything?
I worked out mine with you early on.
Yeah, we're all good?
So you want me to take what we've discussed, if you can give me that written one, I can put it all together and put a final one together and we can vote on it next meeting? Want to do that?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
This has everything
Madam
that we
Chair?
discussed tonight in it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I think we just had one word
Those
after that.
pencil stuff.
Wasn't it just one word we were fighting over, not fighting over, excuse me, going back to political issues, the word refrain, if we get that, then I think we got everything done.
We had two sections that.
Wording on political issues and.
Yeah, and there were some other pieces in here, there's a lot, this way you can vote on a clean document,
Okay.
because right now trying to do it as amended isn't gonna, maybe a little confusing.
The other one was on page 10. Very bottom, all written communication between select board members.
Yeah, I gotta work that language out too.
So if we just move the vote to maybe the next meeting, Phil?
Great.
Thank you all. We have to go into non-public.
Need a motion to that effect?
I do.
I so move.
We need to know which one it is.
Yeah.
Particular one.
I move that we have a non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A 3CC, which is matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect and adversely the reputation of any person.
I'll
Second.
second.
And before I take a vote on that, I'm just going to note, because I have here on the, under adjournment, there will be no meeting September 1st, which is Labor Day, so our next board meeting will be September 15th. And with that said, would you like to now vote on, all in favor?
All right.
Right?
And you will take the roll call vote in non-public session.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Shall we move to the...
Meeting adjourned, we now go into non-public.
Either the public can move or we can move.
Probably just do it.
That'll be a while.